Hey guys, my name is Matt. The reason for this first video here is to show you why I'm creating this channel and some of my purposes for this channel. The biggest reason why I'm creating it is just when I first started stock trading, it was very frustrating for me to see the lack of information on YouTube and the lack of information online, just to learn things. And it was really frustrating also for me to see the amount of people that tried to really get you to sign up for the class and promise you all this income when, in reality, that's just not the case. So my biggest thing is just to get people to be better at what they're doing right now and then just progress. So I'm going to start with the basics. I'm going to start with candlesticks and trading platforms today, and then we're going to progress from there. So obviously not everybody's going to be in the same spot. So feel free to scroll through the videos. We're going to be getting more and more complex as the videos progress, and then we'll be going from there. So if you really like the content, don't hesitate to subscribe and don't hesitate to smash that like button. Before we dive into the charts here, guys, I do want to go over some basic trading platforms that you guys can use. I personally use Fidelity. That's just what I use. I'm not telling you that you should be using that, but that's just what I got signed up for originally. But most of these brokers have software that's free online that you just download, and then it goes into your computer, and then you can use it that way. Again, I use Fidelity. There's TD Ameritrade. I know quite a few people that use that. There's also something called Forex Exchange. That's more foreign exchanges. It's a little bit more advanced, so I wouldn't recommend it at this point in time. There's also TradingView. I know a lot of people use that. That's more of a web-based program. What I don't recommend is for you to look this stuff up on Google. That's okay if you're doing it on your phone just to check the price of something, but don't trade off of this because there's a lag on it. And lots of times the graphs are very inaccurate. So just don't recommend that at all. But let's dive into the charts here with what we're going with what's going on. So I use the candlesticks that are full. So what that means ultimately, there's multiple different ones that you can use, and it's just what you're comfortable with. There's different styles, so there's about 5 or 6 different styles that you can use. Here there's candlesticks hollow, there's candlesticks filled. I use something that's filled, and then there's also a line. That's the only one I don't recommend. So just play around with it. There's also this one. This is one that a lot of people like to use. It's OHLC, and that just is a little bit more detailed, but I find it a little bit harder to read just because it shows you where the prices ended up at, and then it's a little bit easier to read the wicks. And let's go through some of the wicks here too, and this just shows price fluctuations in the markets as well. So this is going to help you read this candlesticks, and this is the reason why it's so important, because it just shows you how decisive the market is based off of the charting. And then we're going to be going through patterns next week. So it just make sure you guys know how this works before we move forward. So we're going to change it back to candlesticks filled here. And then we're going to go and I'm going to show you how some of this works. And I do recommend, I typically trade off of the daily time frame. If you really want to, if you're not confident in these candlesticks yet, change it to the minute and just watch it. So if you spend an hour, a couple hours just watching it so you understand how it moves and how it works, so you get a little bit more comfortable with reading it. But the big difference between the candlesticks and the line is that it shows indecision. So if you see this here, this is ultimately where the price ended, but there's a lot of buying and selling that goes on here. So the price went all the way down to the bottom of this wick and then also went all the way up top. So what that tells you is the market's not exactly sure where it's going. So it did go up, but it also went down, right? So then the price went all the way up and then went all the way down. So when you see these types of things, what that ultimately means is that it's not exactly sure where it's going. So this is on the 6-month time frame, and this is on daily frequency. So 6 months at a time on the daily. Now I trade usually 3 to 6 months, but this is the sell-off back in March, right? So it went all the way down and went all the way back, and then we've been working our way up ever since. But you can really see there's a lot of indecision here. And then some of the indicators that I do like to use, there's 3 of them. So I don't, a lot of times people on YouTube love to show their fancy charts, right? So that really doesn't do a whole lot. You're going to be more successful if you just have the basics, because that's all you really need. So there's the RSI indicator, there's the MACD, which we'll be going through next week more in detail, and there's volume. I pretty much go use the volume and the MACD. I do, those are my two big ones. I do like the RSI as well. But let's go through the volume here and why that's just so important, because it shows momentum. So if you see here, this is earnings release with Disney, and this is the day that they beat earnings because of their Disney Plus software, right? Or their streaming service. So you had a ton of volume going in here. So what does that tell you? It tells you it's a very big, decisive move. There's a lot of momentum. So it's not going to come right back down. You know, when you have something with lower volume, like you did over here, where it went all the way up and then went all the way down, it's not really decisive. It's a weak move up, if that makes sense. There's a lot of buying and not a whole lot of sellers. So when there's a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers, and there's a ton of volume, so the amount of shares being traded back and forth, that shows decision. So if you see with Disney, it went way up and then it stuck with that price. It didn't come back down. That was because the volume was there. With something like this, where there wasn't a whole lot of volume relatively to what you've seen, you know, back in March, and then it spiked up over here again, and even compared to where it was at over here in the May timeframe, it sold off, and that was a big reason why. So just keep that in mind, and when you're seeing things, also pay attention to volume over time frame. So you can see right here that the volume like increased here, but it's been slowly decreasing over time. So just it's a balance, right? So those are the biggest things that I wanted to cover. So your homework for this week, guys: study the charts, get your trading platform that we talked about. Don't use Google. And then play around with the styles that we talked about earlier. So if you like the full candles, the hollow, play around with that, understand that, and then play around with the different time frames. If you can, move it to the 1 minute time frame while the market's open and just look at it and watch it. Just to understand how it works. That'll help you understand the flow of the market a little bit better. If you can't, I understand that. We all have a job and bills to pay. So just try to do that at night and then play around with the different time frames. So the 5 minute, the 1 minute, go to 3 month, go to a year, go to 5 years, and just look and get familiar with their platform. There is a learning curve for that. Next week, we're going to go through some breakouts, and we're also going to go through some technical analysis. So we're going to go through a rising wedge, falling wedge. We're going to go through some technical indicators as well, bull flags, bear flags. So we got a lot to cover next week. So just make sure you feel comfortable with the charts. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comment section below. If you like the content, please subscribe, and peace out till next time.